Good day. I'm Andrea Mitchell in Washington. A day after trying to redefine and narrow the war America has been fighting against terrorism since 9/11, President Obama made the case for a more limited drone war in his speech to the Naval Academy graduates today. Tony Blinken is Deputy National Security Advisor to the President and joins me now from the White House lawn. Tony, thank you very much. First, the drone war and how the President tried to redefine it. He redefined it to include a new standard of near certainty that there would be no collateral damage in using drones. Is that a either reliable or reasonable standard? Some would say that it is too high a standard. How do you live up to that?
Andrea, first of all, thanks for having me on. We've got to put this in context. First of all, when it comes to dealing with terrorists, our strong preference is to be able to capture them, interrogate them, and detain them. And we also hope and are working with other countries to give them the capacity to do that. But there may be instances where the terrorists are in too remote a place or it's simply too dangerous to send forces in. And in that instance, the drone has been an effective tool, and a legal tool. But it's also a tool that we have to put limits on to make sure that it doesn't get abused. And what the President has done is codified standards that we built up to make sure it's used in a smart, sustainable way. The big question is the one that you raised, which is the one of civilian casualties. And there are different estimates about whether civilians have been killed in the course of using drones. The bottom line is they have. And the question is, what can we do to make sure that to the greatest extent possible that doesn't happen? And that's what we've codified. Those are the measures we've put in place. You also have to put this in context. What are the alternatives? Instead of using drones, we could use traditional air power. We could launch missiles from far away. We could send invading armies. These are all far less precise tools that would have far more civilian casualties and get us potentially into wars that we couldn't get out of. So what the President has done very effectively is build up clear standards, clear procedures. He's codified them to make sure we have an effective tool, but one that's used in a careful and sustainable way.
But is the standard of near certainty against civilian deaths realistic? Let's just say, hypothetically, and you were in the room when the strike was taken against Osama bin Laden in Abbottabad. You were right there looking on. Let's say, I mean, you were aware, certainly, that women and children would be in that house, in that expanded family. Would you have not sent in the Navy SEALs, knowing that there could well be women or children who would die along with Osama bin Laden?
Andrew, what the President tried to do yesterday was to actually bring the American people into the Situation Room for exactly the kind of conversations that we have in dealing with these incredibly difficult life or death issues for our citizens, for our troops, and also for people who may be in the vicinity of the terrorists that we're targeting. And we have applied the highest possible standard, which is near certainty. But there can't be certainty. We can't get to that. But we have a standard of near certainty. And all I can tell you is when we are deliberating, when we're deciding, when the President is deciding whether to act, the focus on this is intense. And we do everything possible to achieve that standard.
Wanted to also ask you about the leak investigations. He said in his speech yesterday that he's trying to get answers from the Justice Department. Why does he need answers from the Justice Department about something that has been going on for so long? Isn't he aware more broadly of the way these leaks are pursued and the way journalists have been swept up in it?
Well, Andrew, I obviously can't comment on a specific investigation, but I can say this, and it goes to what the President said yesterday. We have to get the balance right between protecting information that, if it were released, would endanger our people, endanger our soldiers, and protecting our journalists to make sure that they can do our jobs, because that is fundamental to our democracy. And so the Justice Department has standards that it's applied. The President has asked, and the Attorney General has agreed to review those standards in consultation with the media and report to him in 45 days. At the same time, the President believes strongly that we need a media shield law to make sure that there are no abuses in going after journalists. The bottom line is this. We need to be focused on the folks who are breaking the law by revealing classified information, not journalists who are doing their jobs. And we have to get that balance right, and the President's determined to do that.
And I know the President repeated that he wants to close Guantanamo. That's been his aspiration for years now. But Congress keeps blocking him. Should he do something by executive order even though Congress is making it so difficult, it's such a high bar to return those prisoners, for instance, to Yemen. You've got a hunger strike continuing of 102 or 103 prisoners in Guantanamo, detainees. Is there a point at which he should ignore Congress and try to take action and dare Congress to insist that he keep the place open?
Well, first, a little context. Remember, the Bush administration released 530 prisoners from Guantanamo. We released more than 60 before Congress imposed restrictions that make it very difficult, if not impossible, to go forward. And there are 166 prisoners remaining in Guantanamo. Guantanamo has become a symbol that we flout the law. It's a recruiting tool for terrorists and extremists. We're spending almost $1 million per prisoner per year to keep them there, as well as the upkeep of the facility. And there's no rational reason not to end this. The fact of the matter is, we've been very successful in prosecuting those responsible for terrorism or involved in terrorism-related offenses. We've never had a single person escape from a supermax facility in the United States or from a military prison, and we've had success in sending prisoners to other countries. So the president's determined to proceed with this, and he announced a series of measures that he will be taking. We, of course, want to work with Congress to end the unnecessary restrictions, but beyond that, he is taking action himself. For example, we're ending the moratorium on sending prisoners back to Yemen, and we're going to be looking at that on a case-by-case basis. He named a senior envoy from the State Department and the Defense Department whose only job will be to look at working with third countries to take prisoners back. We've determined to make sure that prisoners get the hearings that they're entitled to by law, and the hope is that we will be able to finally close this facility. We've got to get started. We've got to get moving on moving out the remaining 166.
Tony Blinken, Deputy National Security Advisor, thank you very much. Thanks for being with us today.
Thanks, Andrew. Thanks for having me.
And joining me here in the studio is Michael Leiter, NBC News terrorism expert and the former director of the National Counterterrorism Center. The president said that all these years after 9/11 that it's time to move on and redefine this, and in fact focus on the current threats, the lone wolf, Boston, what we saw happen in London. But how is he redefining it? We've yet to hear more about exactly what the new strategy is going to be going forward.
I think the president really did do a very good thing by trying to give some context. The threat has changed, it's evolved, and we face a very different level of threat from Pakistan and elsewhere overseas. And as you said, the homegrown threat, I think, has gotten worse over the past 4 or 5 years. He talks a lot about using all elements of national power. So making sure he can still use drones, making sure that we're engaging overseas, but then also trying to reduce the attraction of the ideology. Frankly, beyond that, he doesn't give a lot of detail about how programs will change, how budgets will change, and I think that's the TBD here.
And in fact, turning the ship around at the CIA. The CIA has now, since 9/11, been a paramilitary organization as much as it is a spy gathering, let's find secrets. It needs to be shifted very dramatically, and you've got John Brennan there, who has the president's, complete alliance and trust. But this is a big deal.
It is. The CIA pre-9/11 was really about strategic intelligence, targets like China and Russia, and post 9/11 became a paramilitary force, and we have to say, an incredibly effective one. It is largely the CIA that disrupted al-Qaeda overseas in places like Pakistan. John Brennan is an incredibly strong leader, and he has the president's trust, and the CIA knows that. And John is going to reduce that effort towards counterterrorism to some extent and move it back towards those traditional intelligence roles that it really does need.
Agencies don't give back money. If we are not going to be involved in as big a drone war, is the CIA going to say, here's my black budget, which we can't even tell the American people about, only 2 committees really look at it, but you can take $100 billion back?
Money is guarded more than anything else in this city, and I think what we don't know yet is if the president says the threat has come down, we've got a more distributed threat here in the United States, the CIA is going to do less drones, the military will do more. What does that mean for resources? How does that shift? And until those resources actually shift, none of this truly takes hold in the federal bureaucracy.
Michael Leiter, thank you very much.